Three, two, and we are live. Welcome, Dispatch Masters. Brianna Cobb here with Troy Bravenboer. We are so excited to see you on this Friday afternoon. I cannot wait to share his story with you all. It has been an amazing 2024. Do me a favor, drop your goals for 2025 in the chat. Say hi to Troy if you have not already. Send him a like, send him a friend request. Welcome, everyone. And before we dive in, really quick, before I introduce Troy, I want you guys to remember the moment that you got into trucking. Remember the exact second that you decided supply chain, logistics, transportation was going to be the industry that you wanted to thrive in, was going to be the industry that was going to build your 401k, your retirement, was going to be the industry that's going to allow you to leave a legacy to your family, to your children, right? That excitement, that belief that you could be a part of something amazing, right? Some of you guys, you're living that dream, and some of you might be wondering where that dream got derailed. Well, tonight we have someone who's not going to just give you strategies on how to achieve that dream. He's going to show you exactly how he turned those same dreams into a reality. Troy has hauled over 30,000 loads, built a $10 million trucking operation, and created a $1 million a year brokerage company. Now, if that sounds anything like the reality you guys are trying to live, do me a favor, drop a 1 in the chat. Troy, it is a blessing to have you on. Welcome to the community.
Thanks so much, Brianna. You are an epic host. I feel like I'll just rewatch that so I can duplicate it on any podcast that I host. Great job. Thanks so much, Brianna. It's great to be here.
Of
Excited
course.
about everybody in the community. You guys are in a great industry. It's definitely not one of those industries that you can, make it by without a couple bumps and bruises, but 2024 is almost over. I think everybody's really excited for 2025, and I really believe that 2025 can be the best year for everybody that's watching this.
I agree. I agree. I've seen an uptick in rates, and that's the best way to cap off Q4, right? But let's talk about the tough stuff, Troy. Let's start from the beginning. Can you take us back to your first or your worst day in trucking, right? Tell us about your mission, your transformation, how you got to where you're at to where you are now.
Yeah. My worst day in trucking, I don't know if I remember my worst day in trucking. I've had some terrible ones. I think one of the first ones that I can remember was my very first truck was a Kenworth T2000, and I had no business being in trucking. And the guy who was driving it for me at one time was basically like, bro, this truck's busted. You got to get rid of it. Da 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 da. It's broke down. It's not going to work. And I didn't really know too much better. I trusted him, even though I probably shouldn't have. And I ended up selling it for like a tow cost, like 5 or 6 grand or whatever the case was. And I got a call from somebody else like a week and a half later saying they saw the truck driving down the highway. So it was like, got kicked in the nads on that one. But you live and you learn. And that was, I want to say that was probably 2014. That was my second year in business. And that's before we adopted our model and we were really able to scale up. So yeah, it was a great learning experience.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And you talk about scaling up. You've handled over 30,000 loads. Wow, that's amazing. Over a decade in business. What was the biggest factor towards your success? And what's the one mistake that you wish you knew back then?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of really practical stuff that I could, talk to people about and help people with. I would say that I would say one of the biggest mistakes, there's a few mistakes that I see people make. And that I think that if people can address these topics in their business, they're going to see a significant impact in how their operation runs. I think first and foremost, people need to treat their business like a business. So if you're like an early stage owner operator, a driver, even a dispatcher, even if you're like a multi-truck fleet, but you're not really running your business with P&Ls and with balance sheets, and you don't really have your data metrics dialed in on your business, you're definitely leaving money on the table and you're not making money where you could be making money, and you're definitely losing money where you shouldn't be losing money. And I see, the beauty about trucking is that anybody can get into it. The downside about trucking is that anybody can get into it. And it's like, people come in and they're like, man, I'm an independent contractor. I'm an owner operator. I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's like, yeah, that's cool, but you're not treating your business like a business. Like, you don't have specifically written down how many miles you drive a day, how many miles you drive a week, how many miles you drive a month. You don't have specifically written down how much each load pays. Like, you don't really have the metrics of your business down. And I get it. It can be challenging. It's not easy. You're on the road. You might feel under equipped to be able to do that. The nice thing is now there's technology that helps people to be able to do that. And if you're still resisting technology, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. It's not going to, AI is not going to start driving your trucks for you anytime in the immediate future. But people who are utilizing technology and AI are going to blow past the competition in the marketplace right now. So I would say number one is like, get serious about treating your business like a business. Really start understanding your data and start, handling your numbers. If that's something that you help people do, Brianna, definitely reach out. Like, get help with this type of stuff. It's stuff that me and our organization, we help fleets with and owner operators with. Don't be afraid of like people stealing your money in this sense. Like, people genuinely want to provide a great service to you to help you run a good business. So that's one thing I would say. And then the second part of that I would say would be like creating systems that scale. Like, I remember when we transitioned our operation into in more of an owner operator model, and we started to scale, I was like, oh man, I can now, instead of buying a truck for 60 or 70 grand in a trailer, I can just lease somebody on and provide a really good service for them. And all it costs me is the apportion plate and the insurance on it. So I'm 4 or 5 grand out of pocket, and I get to now increase my revenue by five, six, $7,000 a week. Now, granted, we weren't making as much margin because we didn't own the truck, but the ability to be able to scale greatly increased. And then now we're looking at, okay, we have to do data. We're doing 50, 20 loads a week, 30 loads a week, 40 loads a week, 100 loads a week. And it's like, okay, now all of that load data has to be processed. I need to reconcile fuel cards. I need to reconcile tolls. I need to reconcile all this type of stuff. But it all comes down to like creating systems that allow you to be able to grow and scale your business. And the mistake I see a lot of people make is they say, well, when I'm that size, I'll do those things. But the reality is it's too hard, because at that point, you're putting out other fires, you're doing other things. And it's like, you really need to start doing the next right thing today and treat yourself today like the business that you want to be tomorrow.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Preach, Troy. Seriously. And you treat your business like a business, because I see so many come into it, and it's not to everyone's downfall, but they'll hire their family, their friends, and you find you can't work with your brother, your mother, your child. Like, it's just not a business relationship.
That's
And
so big.
building
Yeah.
those systems that scale, it's too late to do it down the road, because you'll never reach that point. So thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
being.
so many people are hiring their brother, their sister, their girlfriend, and like, I can't tell you how many guys I talk to. Oh, my girlfriend does that for me. My baby mama does that for me. My sister does that for me. My son does that for me. And it's like, oh, really? They're professional? No, she's a nurse, but she helps me out with this on the side. No, he works here and helps me out with that on the side. Like, this business has so many intricacies, man, that like, you need professionals in your corner that know how to file a bond if you have a broker that doesn't pay. You need somebody that knows how to follow up and process with factoring companies to make sure you get the money that you deserve. It's actually costing people more money to not have the right partners than if they just partnered up with the right people. They would grow faster and make more in the process. So.
Literally, literally. Thank you so much for saying that. Because the same thing happened with Calais and I, and I'm one to admit when I don't know something, when I need an expert in my corner. You can learn how to do all those things, file a bond and factor, but by then it could be too late. You're missing out on money that you could have negotiated, or that was already on the table waiting for you to grab.
Yeah.
So I
And they
completely
say if
understand
you
where you're
want to
coming
go
from.
fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, you got to go with a team. And like,
Yes.
that's part of that's part of like how we grew up. Like I wore all the hats. Like I didn't drive, but I hired a truck driver and I had no business being in trucking. It was a total miracle getting in the industry. But I started to like create systems that allowed me to scale. I had a dispatching system. I knew how to do it. I had a process. The first guy I hired was a dispatcher. And like, look, when you're working with owner operators, like if your owner operators aren't making money, they don't stick around, you know? So a lot of people want to hate on a dispatcher sometimes or dispatching services, but they're like, we know that, dispatching services know the market. Carriers know the market. They have customers. They provide a value. So it's like, but you've got to do it in a way that scales. And then it's admin and creating that in a system where that scales. So it's, creating all of these different departments and having systems that can enable growth. And, you just have to ask yourself, like, do you want to grow one by one or do you want to go 10 by 10? And oftentimes, if you want the 10 by 10 growth, then you're going to need to hire or work with partners that have 10 by 10 capacity.
Exactly. Exactly. Troy, when you look at your most profitable versus your more struggling months, what is the difference in your routine or the data or the market? What habits actually move that needle, or what levers did you hit, like you said, to differentiate between that 1x or that 10x in growth?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it. Is there a specific like portion? So just so people understand like my background a little bit, and then maybe you can ask it. So had a carrier company that we founded with one truck. We scaled it up to 70 trucks. We're doing 1.2 million dollars a month with that company. As a carrier company, we have a brokerage company. We just had our biggest month of the year, and it's only the 19th or the 20th. So I think we're at like 120 or $125,000 so far for this month on our brokerage. So I have a software company that is a pre-seed round. We've raised $500,000 out of a $1.5 million investor round right now, and that's going to be really awesome in what it does for carriers. There's not a lot of stuff. It's actually nothing that does what this does. And then we have a coaching company that we offer for fleet owners, owner operators, and dispatch services and brokers as well too. So is it just in general, like what do we do to like keep it, or like do you want to niche down? I feel like I could answer it in a few different
Uh,
ways.
Niche down for like the owner operators, the
Yeah.
dispatchers, the consultants, or the independent freight brokers.
Yeah.
People who started off and are looking to be in shoes.
Yeah, so I think that like from a grand scheme, so here's the thing is that again, like treat your business like a business, right? Like I remember early on when I first started my trucking company, I needed to supplement my cash flow. I did really well in sales, and then we basically took all of our investments, started a trucking company, and 2 years of learning trucking ran out of my some of my nest egg, and like had to restart the business model in trucking. So I had to get a job while I'm building my trucking company with this owner operator model, and I was working at a California pizza kitchen here in the Tampa area, and so I'm slinging pizzas in the afternoon and in the evening, and trucking during the day. But one of the things that stood out to me that time was that they had year over year metrics for that same day, and then week over week metrics for that same day. And, a lot of times people don't realize like this business can be very seasonal. Like it's very typical for December to be a high month, right? Why? It's, Christmas, whatever, holidays, that's going to happen. And it's the first week of January, very typical. It's going to be real strong returns. There's some extra commerce. And then you're going to hit around the 13th, 14th, 15th every January, and the market's going to generally hit a suck tank for about 60 days. It's going to go till like the early spring. And usually there's going to be an uptick with some nursery items coming out of Florida or some different produce that's starting to kick off in the South. And, it's not an overall like, hey, this is always how it works, but this is a pretty good generality on how the market works, right? So like if you're comparing January to December, you're like, yeah, you're going to be pissed. If you're comparing December to November, like there's going to be differences. So I think number one, again, like not to like break the record, but it's like, have your numbers, like know what you did that week. So one of the things I do is I number every week of the year. So there's 52 weeks of the year. So like, for instance, right now we're in week 24, year 2024, week 50, right? So now when I want to look back, I can look back at my metrics over 2450 versus 2350 versus 2250. So I can tell exactly what this week did compared to this week in previous years. So number one is that allows you to emotionally detach yourself from this month from last month. And they say poor people look at their lives from day to day. Middle class people look at their life and their finances month by month. Upper class people look at their finances year over year, and then the wealthy look at their finances decade by decade. And I feel like truckers oftentimes are like, if this specific load does not pay $2.75 a mile, I'm not freaking taking the load. And I'm like, dude, that's not how business works. Restaurants sometimes are open on the lunch and they lose money on the lunch because they're going to gain the customers back on the dinner or on the weekend. But if you never gave people like the opportunity to experience your restaurant for lunch, they would not know to come back. So like this comes again, it just comes down to like having a bigger picture of understanding how your business works, learning to emotionally detach yourself from it. And then I would just say don't change too much stuff at once, you know. And in marketing, they have something called A/B testing. Like you do something, you get the metrics for how something works, and then you change one thing. You don't change a million things, you change one thing. And you test the new one thing against the old thing that had been working and say, hey, what change does this have, good or bad? But if you change three, four, five, six different things, you don't know, did one really work phenomenal, but the other one really didn't work? So now you're under, you know, it's not giving you a really good feedback that's on it. So I would say, you know, the biggest thing is for people to know their numbers, know what their average production is to track it, learn how to emotionally detach themselves from their results and look at it more like a business owner looks at it, and then identify the one thing that you want to change about your operation, and then do that for 30 days, see what results that you get from it, and then, you know, reassess from there.
I love that. I love that. Emotional detachment and knowing your numbers, knowing your metrics specifically. Thank you so much for sharing how you essentially recession proof your business. That is so inspiring. You know, you've seen hundreds, I'm sure thousands of owner operators come and go. What separates the ones who make it from the ones who don't? You know, other than going back and forecasting or looking back at that old data. You talked a little bit about it earlier, their P&L. A lot of owner operators don't know their numbers. They don't know their operating
Correct.
costs. They don't set these maintenance budgets aside. So what do you think separates the ones who make it, who can scale, and the ones that don't?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just going to continue to see a common thread through this because it's like a lot of people want the magic sauce, they want the gold dust, they want the lightning in a bottle, right? But business is about basic blocking and tackling. Like you have to get the every business is this way, and it really comes down with understanding what your true operational costs are. You know, like you need to look at like a minimum of a 3 month set of data, and you need to have everything. You need to know the miles that you drive. You need to know how many loads that you took over that period of time. You need to know the individual value of each one of those loads. You need to know exactly how much you spent on repairs, exactly how much you spent on fuel, how much you spent on any additional services. And you really need to understand to a penny perfect. And the thing is with technology now, it's not hard. It just becomes overwhelming if you wait to do it. So if you just get in the habit of logging this stuff every single day, you just log it. It takes you less than 5 minutes to log it. If you don't know how to do it, you can reach out to me on Facebook, send me a DM. We'll get on a call. Maybe Miss Brianna has a tool that you guys can be able to use. Our software that we're building is insane. It's going to be able to do it for you with AI. But you know, you just need to start tracking this stuff if you're not currently doing it. And then you need to start making your decisions based on the numbers that you know. And if you know, like, hey, this is what I normally do, this is how I normally operate, then you know, like, hey, like you actually have like a cost per mile for maintenance, and it's not what you think it is. It's what it actually is. You need to look at the last 3, 6 months, how many miles that you drove and how much you spent on maintenance. You take how much you spent by how many miles that you drove, and that is your cost per mile for maintenance. And you save that into an account that you do not freaking touch. Even if it looks like it's enough to go to Cabo, you don't touch it because you're going to spend it. It might be a turbo, it might be it doesn't matter what it is. You are
Yeah.
going to spend it. Even if, you know, whatever, maybe if it's $15,000, you can cap it off at that point, but you need to be able to do that, right? So I would say that. And then the other thing that I would say that's very practical for the owner operators that make it versus the don't is the owner operators that have a banging week or a banging 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden spend their money. Oh, I made a great paycheck, and then they don't go out. And this is what happens. It's that their paycheck is a lagging metric. You have a great freaking week, right? And I saw this. There's videos of me. You can go to our YouTube for our carrier company, and we'd have guys doing 7, 8, 9, $10,000 weeks like back in 2020, 2019, 2020. Like these guys were smashing it. And I was telling people, like, look, make hay while the sun is shining because the market's going to pull back. The market's going to pull back. The market's going to pull back. And what would happen is that these guys would have slamming weeks. The next week, they'd be like, meh, because they're expecting a good check on Friday. And sure enough, they'd take home 4 grand, just something stupid for that week. And they'd get that paycheck. And then they wouldn't work the whole next week. They'd take the next week off. And then they'd get paid that Friday, the meh paycheck of their half a week that's there. And then they would get back on the road after a meh paycheck and they'd have a meh work attitude. And then they would get a paycheck that Friday, not forgetting that it was the week off that they had before it. So they get no paycheck, but maybe they're still having to pay their insurance or their fuel. And now they are pissed off at the world. You're robbing me. You're stealing from me. And you're like, no, dude, you're just like, this is what happens. You're not getting paid today for the work that you did yesterday. This is the work that you're doing compounding over time. And again, it's knowing your numbers and just like treating your business like a business. Don't treat this thing like just because you have 1 or 2 good weeks, like you're going to go on vacation, you're going to go on a cruise. Like chill, get your money in the bank. Like understand that if you take a week off, it's going to take a week and a half before your paycheck starts going, depending on where you're at in the world. So yeah, don't take off, like have time, be balanced, right? Be in love with your spouse, go on vacation, be there for your kids. I'm not saying don't do those things. I'm just saying that do it within reason. You can't just make one good paycheck and then want to take 10 days off or 5 days off or whatever the case is.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a balance there, Troy. I completely agree with you 1,000%. You talked a little bit about your carrier company, and I'm sure a lot of people here are wondering about driver recruitment or leasing on. What's that process like, and how did you build a team that actually sticks around while others are struggling with turnover? It's really refreshing to hear that level of transparency that you just shared with your carriers. So,
Yeah.
what did you do, or how did you build a team that was able to stick around for so long and understand that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple parts to this. Is one, we made onboarding very simple. So the very first thing that we did in 2017 is we took these course platforms that most people were like creating courses and selling them on, and we just decided to do all our onboarding with video courses, right? So we didn't have these long drawn out processes. I could take a lead and turn them into a revenue producing truck in 48 hours, 72 hours. We had a national drug testing partner that was amazing at doing drug tests where people were. We can call them in, and we had decals set up with national vendors, so we were able to turn that stuff around. So we really systematized the onboarding experience for the driver to reduce the friction, because we knew that drivers can be flighty sometimes, and it's like they can love you today, but then this business there's a lot of carriers that promise people the sun, the moon, the stars, and you know what I mean? It's all, Skittles and rainbows, just to find out that they can't even do anything, like, oh yeah, 10 grand a week, no problem. Take home 4 grand a week. Like, dude, no, like get out of here. Yeah, maybe if you're doing ODOW or something like that. But so we knew that we had to have a quick turnaround process. So we systematized that. We ran a lot of Facebook ads. We got good at running Facebook ads. And again, we were doing it in 2017, 2018 when we started. So it was, we were getting like $1.50 cost per lead. And we used, modern technology. We used CRMs to, we had very clear conditions and rules that would bring people from early stage to mid stage to end stage. We had a very clear process of what documents needed to be done, how things needed to be able to done. And then once we got the drivers on board, we had an education philosophy with these guys. And we took people on based off of values. Like, we needed to know that we were in agreement with how work was going to be done before we were going to do it. Like, if you're like, oh, I'm only driving these states and these states, cool, then you're only making this money. So like you're fine to drive whatever. We're not going to make you drive where you don't want to drive, but just understand if you only want to drive in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas because it's snowing anywhere else, don't expect to be making top dollar because top dollars is in the snowstorms and the
Yeah,
blizzards and et cetera, right? So we
exactly.
just we made sure that there was alignment on it and we hired based off of those integrity values and based off of transparency. And then we did our best to coach people when they're on about running their business like a business. And not everybody was down to work hard like that, but the ones that were, they had better businesses, better families, and they were able to scale from there.
That's awesome. That is amazing, Troy. Thank you so much for sharing that story and your insights. It's such a blessing to hear how you were able to take the power of AI, your knowledge over the past decade, and build this legacy that is continuing to grow. So thank you so much
For
for
sure.
sharing that, Troy. For everyone that's watching, if you're ready to stop putting out fires in your business, if you want to harness the power of CRM, tech, AI, and start building processes and systems that actually scale, do me a favor and type systems in the chat. Troy, before we hop off, is there anything else that you would like to leave with the crowd or anyone else watching?
Just believe in yourself, and it's going to take more work than you think it's going to take, but the reward is going to be better than you imagine it.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And drop your YouTube too. What was that? I'm gonna follow it right now. All your
Oh, the
social.
best one now is we really it's our ministry one, Brave Life. If Brave Life Now, and for a while we were running something called Trucker Church. So we have a huge heart to be able to have a digital broadcast for truckers. So right now we call it Entree Church because it's really geared towards like all entrepreneurs. So we have 2 Monday broadcasts. We do Entree Prayer on Monday morning at 7 a.m. and it's a prayer specifically for entrepreneurs. And then we have Entree Church on Monday night at 7 p.m. So 7 a.m., 7 p.m. all on Monday. And it's a digital service, like a teaching, biblical teaching that's designed for entrepreneurs. So they're powerful. Check us out, bravelifenow.com. Would love to make more of an impact in the logistics community with that. And that's our big thrust right now.
I love that. I love that because spiritual health is wealth. So that is
Yep.
amazing. Thank you so much for dropping that. For everyone that's watching, Jay and everyone else in the comments, too many to read right now. Thank you guys so much for hopping on. Please give Troy a follow. Make sure you follow all of his social channels as well. Troy, it has been a blessing to have
Thanks,
you
Brianna.
on,
Thank you
and
so
I
much.
cannot
Yeah.
wait to reconnect with you soon.
Yeah, same. Thanks.